Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining our webinar today. My name is Lena. I'm the digital marketeer at EPP, and I'll be your host for today. The speaker we have today is Olivier Cognet. He is co-founder and chairman at Predictive Layer, and he will discuss more about artificial intelligence for dynamic pricing. Now, before I give the word to him, I would just like to explain to you that after the webinar, we will take out some time to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, you can just ask them. There's a question box on the right control panel. The webinar will also be recorded, so anyone who couldn't join or who wants to just review it afterwards, you will have the chance for that. There will also be a very short survey when the webinar finishes, so if you can answer that, it will be highly appreciated. Okay, so Olivier, I think I will give the word to you, and enjoy everyone.
Hello, good afternoon everybody, or good morning depending on where you are. Thank you very much, Lena, for this introduction. So my name is Olivier Cognet. I'm the co-founder and the chairman of Predictive Layer. And here we're going to talk today about how artificial intelligence can be applied to dynamic pricing, and we'll try to go beyond the hype and get to a real use case. But before that, what I suggest is that we first of all set up a bit of context. So we've prepared some questions for you. So Lena, you want to ask those questions?
Yes, they are live now. We will just give a few seconds for all of the questions.
So you have the opportunity here to try to understand how much your pricing process is digitalized. And then are you doing some analytics already on the price that you do for your clients? And how do you use today these analytics? Are you up to artificial intelligence to drive dynamically your prices? That's important to set up the context in which you are to be able to understand how much and how to apply this type of techniques to your systems.
So for the first question, Olivier, we see that 57% says yes and 43% no. So the majority does have their pricing process digitalized.
Very good. Second questions, are you using analytics to set up those price, or are you still in the mode of defining that with your marketing pricing people in a purely human approach?
Here we see an even bigger part that answers yes. So 79% uses analytics to adjust prices for their clients, and only 21% doesn't.
Indeed, it's important.
Now, the last question, do you use artificial intelligence to tune dynamically your prices?
The point here is to understand if you look backward into the analytics or if you use artificial intelligence to look forward in your prices. These are new technologies that can be really helpful.
Okay, Olivier, so here we see that 88% says no and only 12% says yes.
Okay, indeed, that's a kind of a usual representation of a market structure. These are new technologies, artificial intelligence, and so not easy to implement always. And then the interaction with human and with the sales team and the pricing team has to be clearly well defined to be able to make that work. But a big opportunity, obviously, to try to basically migrate the 80% of people who are using analytics to get more intelligence into those analytics with artificial intelligence. Very good. So on this basis of this context, let's try now to get into our agenda of today. First of all, we have been talking about artificial intelligence now for some time to be able to drive pricing. You know, it has been in the media, it has been in some of the big sectors like retailers or travelers or basically most of the online business try to do that. But how does that apply to physical business like retailers and also brokers? That's what we're going to see today. So in order to do that together, the agenda that we propose is, first of all, to try to understand what are the challenges and the opportunities that are on the pricing, and on that basis, understand how AI can help to make a base price. But it's good to speak about that on a theoretical perspective, but it's even better to see through a real use case. So here we're going to show you a use case of an industrial company who has been using that now for several years and who is leveraging you know, these type of technologies. But based on that, last item of the agenda, what are the success factors and how to get started with this? What timeline? Is it a 3-year project, or can you build that incrementally so that you can migrate smoothly your organization to it? Okay, so let's get started with the challenges and opportunities. So who we are, first of all, to be able to speak about that. At Predictive Layer, we are a company that is focused on artificial intelligence, but on its implementation on business and business operations. So basically, we are a group of people who are mixing business, math, and ITs, and we have deployed, you know, or type of solutions into very different type of sectors, but industrial, product, and services sectors. Not every sectors can be using that type of technology, but most of the product and services sectors can do that. Of course, we can do that by ourselves, but we have also to work with larger organizations who are already present in those sectors, and that's how we partner and develop our solutions. Nonetheless, it's important to understand that the true value of this is going to come from the advanced mathematics that you can implement. So research collaboration with advanced mathematical laboratory is very critical to make that happen. Having said that, let's move now to pricing. What are the trends into a B2B pricing process? First of all, I would say that in the past, many of the pricing and price were set up by pricing entities or product entities, and then the sales team had to adjust those prices based on their clients. But having in real time the capability to get a true price for a specific client is something that is becoming more and more important. Indeed, for B2B customers, more and more, every kind of customers wants to be treated in a very targeted way. Not the same approach should apply for the same client, for different clients. In the same way, when you have online distribution disruption, the online pricing is bringing a disruption versus the physical pricing. So being able to have a consistency between the two things is very important. Last, but even more important, when you have larger operation in several regions, in several countries, on a global perspective, it's important to have consistency between the price, but being able to adapt to the local specificities of the local context, depending on the context on the competitive side, depending on the context on the geographic side and value that client can extract from your product. So all these aspects are currently key trends and key opportunities to be able to adjust the price. On that basis, it's also important to understand what price do you try to adjust. Are we talking about adapting the price of a discount to a local context? Are we talking about special project price? Are we talking about yield management to be able to monetize as much as possible an inventory? Are we talking about online versus physical channels price consistency? All of these pricing and price aspects can be treated in a separate way, but needs to have a global consistency. And that's where by working the analytics and in the global picture can allow to drive certain pricing strategy in one or the other of these segments. In fact, this is, as we were saying before, It's not, there are already several sectors who are doing that for some time. For instance, flights and hotels are the most famous, and they have been able to show the value extracted by that, by adjusting the price over time, by adjusting the price vis-à-vis the specific profile of the client. Online shopping, online sales can already implement that. So for any physical sales, it has to be taken in consideration that online in particular is disrupting that, and that if you apply a consistent model between the two, you can get much significant value and on revenue and margin side with this type of technologies. What does that mean technically? In fact, targeting dynamically price can be considered in most of the business. The whole point is to consider all the various deals that are already existing and all the projects that are already priced by your organization. And if you plot this type of prices, you will get many different type of projects with different basket mix, with this different client profile, and maybe also with some cyclicality and seasonality in your business. And in front of these three dimensions, one wants to apply a strategy that is consistent. So you want to apply similar pricing approach for the same client over time. So you would have client who would value higher value product a bit higher than other client who would be more commoditized product. And you need automatically to be able to compare those price and adjust those price in a relevant way. It would be a bit ridiculous to propose to the purple client A a price that is more suited for the client B. And in the same way, you cannot treat everybody in an average perspective. Otherwise, again, you lose margin or revenue on this. So there are more and more need for specific tuning of the price or tuning of the discount that is made for a project or for a price list. That's the whole purpose of how we're going to be using AI here. The point of AI is to automatically consider the existing data of the existing deals of your business, connecting to your existing ERP, CRM, and business intelligence infrastructure, but also to correlate that with external information that represents your market. This can be competitive information. This can be market conditions. If you are selling some construction product in a certain countries, there may not be the same construction market dynamic than what you have in other countries. And by connecting this data, we can ask an artificial intelligence system to extract rules and to extract consistent way of pricing that are made in your organization. If you consider that on a purely one dimension, there is often not enough price to be able to do advanced analytics. If you consider in a weighted way all the data, there is a way to produce a dynamic price, which will start by understanding dynamically the demand as well as the supply, and to propose a price recommendation. So that's the way this type of system works. That's the way we suggest to implement artificial intelligence and machine learning to get real-time price to support the sales agent in its selling process. If we look at that a little bit in detail, when you do analytics, you take a backward view. You look at the past and you try to understand, by looking at the past, what were the way to segment the business. So a classical human way would be to say, I will split my clients in 4 categories, and there would be the clients which buy at high price, medium low, low price. What does artificial intelligence there is to automatically segment the client in a much more than 4 dimensions, and taking in consideration the real price based on their real local contextualization, depending on the geography, on the product mix, on the time of the year. Here, for instance, you can see that it's a cyclical business. At the time of today, the market is more on the price dropping. if I just look at analytics which look at the past, I will have a tendency to price too high because currently the price is down. So that's the beauty of artificial intelligence, and that's what you can get by being much more micro-segmented than the usual 4 or 10 dimension that analytics would do. Artificial intelligence will be able to extract automatically 10, 12 best dimensions. And these dimensions would be the real pricing dimension on your business, as opposed to what a marketing organization may have thought to be the segmentation rules. So the way dynamic price would work with artificial intelligence is that it would automatically compute the trend and position the value of what is being priced right now by making a forecast of what will happen if things continue the way they do before. Such a forecast is not just a simple linear forecast. The point is not just to say because it went up, it needs to go up. In fact, here we have a cyclicality of a business that comes to a kind of flat level, top level. So we should not continue to increase the price without knowing and understanding that, in fact, it's a usual cyclicality. Now, this price, artificial intelligence can be programmed in order to produce a target price, which would be a normal medium price for this average client. But the same system can also compute what is a minimum price or what is a maximum price that should be affordable for this client. And of course, the clients don't have the same sensitivity to the spread between the mean and the max. And so that spread is very important as well to compute dynamically and automatically so that you don't leave money on the table by pricing too low, or so that you are not overpricing your proposal without understanding what's happening. But also it's important to understand that the sales operation is always what's the most important to understand the client. So this is a price recommendation, and the salesperson can choose if he or she is in a highly competitive framework where he would have the tendency to price a bit lower, or if currently he is in a good sales conditions where he can price a little bit higher. So the beauty of proposing a recommendation that will be used on the spot by the pricing team or by the sales agent in order to make a reasonable offer for the client perspective. And of course, two clients may get a various different price. A price for the gain client would be here much lower with this price. So then what is important is that the system and the artificial intelligence is applied to contextualize the price. So in fact, based on the branch, based on the region, based on the local context, here we are an example of a client who was mainly in France. Based on that context, the client may have different competitive dynamics. The system will understand that automatically, but we've also taken in consideration what's happening in the other group. So if I price something for the south of France, but if I see that all the dimensions here are dropping in price, the system would automatically create a price that is taking in consideration what is usually happening in the south, but at the same time understanding the dynamic that is happening nationally. And that, in fact, contextualization will be parameterized to represent the pricing dimensions of the client industry value chain. So these are typical parameters, but they may change for each client, each product, each type of service. So we may want to look at customer loyalty and potential, but also customer dynamics. Is this customer dynamics currently up or down? In that example, this specific blue client is having a much better business dynamics than the average client of that salesperson. What is interesting with this system is that the system would give a representation of all the typical pricing dimension and would give that view to the sales agent so that the sales agent can understand in a very quick view what is the client dynamic and context. Here, a client that is a bit higher than potential, with a good business dynamic, but with a cost of goods sold that is a bit lower and that is currently under pressure. For a project that is currently requested on a fast delivery time, and for a product mix that is a bit higher than the average. What is interesting again is that instead of comparing the blue clients with the average of the market, it is comparing the blue client with the specific context of the salesperson or of the region or of the branch that we are looking at, so that we compare apple with apple and we don't apply global dynamic to every client. So this pricing dimension is very important because it will allow the salesperson to recommend a price among the range that is proposed, taking in consideration the exact position. It will also allow the salesperson to potentially explain that and use that as a story, as a way to position his price vis-à-vis his client. Having said that, it is to be, intuitive and efficient for the salesperson. So here is an example of a screen where a normal CPQ is proposing a certain price for a set of products. So you have a basket of products with 3 products. And in fact, the dynamic pricing is proposing the yellow, the green, and the red price for each of the products. And when the machine does that, the algorithm will take in consideration the product mix, the client profile, as well as the seasonality. So if, for instance, product 2 is very often purchased with product 1, there is likely to sell a bit higher product 2 because it's attached to product 1. So even if the salesperson decides to use a yellow price for the product 1, he may use a green price for the product 2. And if the product 3 is something that is a bit new, that is a bit of an extra, maybe the sales agent will want to make an effort on the product 3, so he will position a red price. So the salesperson can make the choice on how he's allocating his price, but at the same time, the system will give him in real time the view of what is his total basket. So here, despite the yellow, the green, and the red, the total basket is green. And so he can see his margin, and he can see that he's going to make a good deal out of this. And having said that, we can see that this tool is, this type of technology is a way for the salesperson to get a very efficient recommendation. And second of all, it can be inserted in the existing application that are used for pricing. So either with no application existing for those who are not very well digitalized so far, then we can get the full screen here, or to insert this price recommendation in the existing pricing and quotation tools that may be already installed in the system. Now, how does work the artificial intelligence to manage that? In fact, the AI is controlling the conversion rate. So the system will automatically track the various deals based on the price on which they have been done, and it will measure how much of these deals are converts into orders. So the system will watch the conversion from offer to orders, and it will manage so that this conversion rate stay constant. And it will give the management of sales the capability to go up or down. So here we see, for instance, that executive management has decided to make a volume action. So they want to increase their conversion rate. So this means that they will want to drop a little bit their price to get more volume. So by doing that, executive management will increase for a certain amount of time this lever, and they will then automatically propose the red price, yellow price, and green price that are a bit lower so that the conversion rate increase. And as we can see, the response of the system will come because more and more price will be proposed in yellow and red at the new price, and the conversion rate will go up. So that notion of pricing control is very important for sales management and for executive management. So here is a concrete example of how to manage various product lines. So here we have 2 product lines. In each product lines, we have subcategories of 6 products and 7 products. And sales management decide to do volume action on the more commoditized product and margin action on those added value products. So this can be parameterized for at any time of the day or as the business goes on, either by the central pricing policy, but also it can be customized at every branches. It's not because that you want to do a high inventory action on the lowest commoditized product on a global perspective, but it has to be done everywhere. So in some local branches, the local sales manager can decide to remain flexible vis-à-vis the national strategy and to not apply that and to get to a more normal situation. So that's a very granular capability that would be understood and grasped by the machine and which would automatically impact the price that are produced in the recommendations. So that would be now a very interesting central way as well as local way to customize the price and to get a pricing policy applied, as opposed to the current behavior that is more to say we do a full action on this product and it's applicable everywhere, or we do an inventory action a little bit everywhere as well. Okay. So all of that controlled by a web interface and simple actions with button. And not only you click the button to make an action, but then you define the strength of your action. So here, for instance, the super added value product category 7 would not be discounted much. Would not be increased in price much. We still want to sell a fair amount of volume of that. We're more going to extract margin from these 2 lines that are a bit lower added value. In the same way, we said the system is controlling the conversion rate. So the system in real time is producing to anybody in the organization on his perimeter what is the current situation. So we can select that per region, per branch. We can select that per product line. We can product family. We can even look at the size of the project. We can look at, like here, all the project, but we can look at the small project, the big project. Okay. And we can look at that in terms of number of projects, in terms of volume, in terms of revenue, or in terms of margin. And because the system has everything in its memory, it can in real time produce the result. What we see here is that the gray are those projects that are not priced through the dynamic engine. And all the other colors are the projects that are priced through the dynamic engine. And we see that over time. And so building that type of report is real time. So I can immediately see that the projects that are made in dark red price, which is the lowest price, have a higher conversion rate than this one, than this one, than this one. So in an ideal world, if the price recommendation is well followed by the sales agent, and if the system is working with enough data, we have here a distribution of the conversion rate that decline as we are increasing the price. So it's very interesting to see that over time to pilot the business. It's also very interesting to share practices. We may have different behavior of salespeople. Some salespeople having a tendency to discount more, or some region having a tendency to discount less. And you would see that and you would be able to understand per product line, per agent, per over time, what has been their behavior. So that's really the core dashboard to understand and see how the AI engine is pricing well. Okay. Of course, this has to be provided in a friendly way to the sales agent. So as a sales agent, I want to see all the projects that I manage. So if I log in, I can look at all my projects. I can list all my projects in terms of offers, quote, or sales orders, and I can see where and how they were priced. The green, the blue, the dark. I can see that per client. And as I do that, having this dashboard, it's allowing me to focus my action. If I am a sales agent, I will choose first the big projects that are not yet closed, and I may work on them. Then I can have a specific action on the smaller project if I take only the small project in terms of volume, or I can have an action on all the projects on which I was heavily discounting, all the dark red. So then I would select here the dark red. So this is a fantastic tool in that sense for the sales agent to understand and drive his activity and to price in an efficient way at the right level for every client. Another aspect of it that you can and that you have to monitor is the evolution of the total business overline. So over time here, we are monitoring the business in terms of revenue and in terms of margin. In terms of revenue, this is the top line here, the pricing engine was proposing the blue line. We can see that the salespeople, the yellow line, has been adopting the recommendation. Starting in November, there was an intent to increase the price, and so the DPE has increased the price. A little bit after, the salespeople have reacted to it and have increased their price. So here, it's a very interesting thing because the sales team is taking confidence, is trusting the machine. And if they don't trust the machine, they price a bit differently. But over time, they have a tendency to follow the machine because they realize that it is increasing their margin. Okay. So this type of dashboard, again, can be immediately used at an individual level, at a branch level, at a region level, or at a country level, even across country. And because the machine works on all the data simultaneously, it can produce this result in real time, despite the fact that you may have thousands and thousands of orders that have been managed by that system. Over time, if I am an executive manager, I want to track what is my business. And here what we see is that we track the business on the way as the week are progressing. Every day of the week, I can see the offers that have been done. Here I have selected only the offers, the quotes, and I can see that the Monday is very busy and at the end of the week has a bit less quote being done. So I can also see that several of these projects, because I look at that on a per project basis, I can look at that saying that there is a proportion of the project priced in green, in blue, and in red. So over time, I would like more and more to be priced in between red and blue, because that's the target price. But I can see here that many people extract more value from this by, in fact, taking and choosing the top of the range. Okay. And this is coming from real data from a product line of an industrial broker. So as we can see, 2021 started okay. And overall, with this type of leverage of artificial intelligence, the first thing is that we give to the sales management and to the sales agent a very efficient tool to set up an appropriate price for a basket of product. So if a salesperson is managing a wide portfolio with many different types of product of different value, if that portfolio is sold in very different regions, with this tool, we have an immediate, fast, and reliable pricing that is personalized for the client and for the product basket that I'm working at now. So the salesperson spends less time internally to negotiate a discount, but he has more time to talk with the client, to explain the decision, to explain the reasoning, and to get a true assessment of what price to be done. As a result, he's going to reach much faster his objective by getting that in real time. Meanwhile, sales management is much easier because you can drive and you can control what's being done. You can avoid wasting time on discounts that are very significant, but that are normal because of this type of client and sector. And at the same time, you can make sure that you don't allow discount on projects that are not worth discount. So it's really an efficient way to globally manage revenue and to let the figures and the true driver of the market make that happen. But still controlled by the sales and by the true relationship with the client. But all in all, with this type of techniques and technology, what we have noticed is that it's increasing the overall revenue and so the margin that is made for a certain existing client. That gives more time to the sales agent to work on clients that they were working less before, and so it's incrementing as well the market share. And overall, it's a better explanation for the client of the price that is made for him. So it's increasing the satisfaction of the end client because he has an explanation for the price that he can get. Now, this sounds like a complex system connecting and mixing in real time many data, but the true thing is that there are processes and steps that can be applied to get that inserted into an existing pricing model in a smooth way. So first of all, the idea is that in a first step, you want to work on your historical data to understand if you have enough and if the historical data are deep enough in terms of meaning to be able to represent the right price of your value chain. So that's what would be done in the proof of value. And this is kind of an offline process, so it does not require yet a real-time interconnection with the IT system. So you can do that simply in 5 to 7 weeks. If that works, you can show what incremental value can be provided. And so you can move them to a live pricing. When you do that, you produce the price, but you propose that price to trusted salespeople, and to make this trusted price being assessed by the trusted salespeople, to make sure that the system has understood the different step of the value chain of your pricing. And again, you try that for 2-3 months with trusted salespeople, and only if that works, you can move along to a live deployment. So the point is to have a progressive way to invest and to test this type of system to understand if it applies on small or big deals, if it's applied on price list, or if it's applied only on special project. And before deploying that, making sure that trusted salespeople believe and trust that price. Now, through this type of true experience with true clients, we've also learned what are the critical success factors to implement this. Because many people and many things on the market may just say, we're going to put AI, we take your data and we process data. But the point is that there is a very comprehensive business process to put in place in order to make that happen. First of all, making sure that we understand and we define what is the price we try to optimize. Is it the base price list? Is it the special project price? Is it the channel discount? Really making, you know, a clear decision on what is it we're going to try to optimize. And to optimize that, it's not just mathematics, it's all about understanding the value chain of your business. So it's a business sponsored. It has to be driven by the business team, by the revenue management team, by the sales team, by the pricing team, by those who understand the dynamic between supply and demand. And so working with them to define the price and to define the KPI is critical. Then it's also important to make sure that we work on data that are good, that are clean. And very often it's not very simple. There are many different types of existing systems. The point is to extract data from this system and make sure that the data are clean enough for the AI to work on. And so that's being done as part of the offline process in the proof of value, that to understand if the current data are already meaningful, or if we will have to learn during a certain period of time with the new data before being able to learn properly. At last, I would say it's also important that it's rather impossible to predefine upfront what will be the end of this. We need to take an approach where we're going to try, we're going to learn, we're going to adjust on the way. So the importance of working with the business teams to make sure that we make something that is relevant for them and that it can be adjusted with them if the system see some gaps or some issues. So all of that, the point is also how to get started with this, because only 12% of you have been using AI already. So 88 still need to define how they could engage. So here is just an example of a real, implementation. How would you start? In fact, you would start with a proof of value, defining the target price we try to optimize. We reduce the scope to a small number of products, smaller geography, but we still process all the data. We define what price we do. Then IT work, collect the data, clean the data, process the data, and then train the model and compare the model results with the existing actual price that the sales team have done in the recent past. And that will allow to identify what is the incremental value that we would have done in the past. And so that value would be the benchmark that we would use later on to see if the pilot is working well. And of course, this has to be done in an executive environment and sponsored by an executive approach, because here we are mixing pricing, revenue management, and sales. So it's very important to have a strong coordination with these three teams. So the importance of executive sponsorship on this. So that was the key elements that we wanted to share with you today about the real industrial distributors and sellers of physical product implementing AI and going beyond the hype, getting to a real tool used by the sales team, the pricing team, the revenue management team. So maybe some questions. Lena, have you been able to collect some questions from the audience?
Yes, Olivier, indeed. I think maybe we can start answering a few, and then meanwhile, if people have questions, you can just keep them coming. So we have a first question here. I send it to you, Olivier, but I will read it out loud for everyone as well. Dynamic pricing definition implies that prices vary. How do B2B customers plan their budget if their suppliers keep varying prices?
So dynamic pricing is by definition, the price can vary depending on several dimensions. The price can vary because of the product mix, added value product or commodity product, if you manage a portfolio. The price can vary over time if it's a seasonal project, but the price can also vary per customer value, customer profile. And so these are, depending on the dimension that you want to work on, we will supply data describing those dimensions to the machine so that the machine can make the price vary based on these dimensions.
Okay, thank you, Olivier. I have a lot of them actually. I'll just pick out a few. Is the competition monitoring included in the dynamic pricing adjustment?
So if there are sources of competitive data, it's very important to connect them into the system as an external driver of market, and then the system will take that in consideration. What is critical here is to understand if your information about competitive data is old or not. For instance, in a normal sector, you would get report of competitive price with a certain delay. And so you need to tell to the machine, this is competitive price, but be careful, this competitive price is now 1 week old, 2 week old, 3 months old. And the AI system will take that in consideration, which is not very simple on a mathematical perspective. Second of all, if you want to take even more local competition faster into the system, we can plug in CRM input into the system. So let's say, for instance, that every week the local branch sales team define a small report about what is currently doing the competition on a global dynamic. You would put that into the system as an external data, and the system would take that in consideration. Interestingly enough, it would consider this type of input as its fluctuation over time. So if there are regions in which they always say that competitive is very aggressive, and other regions where they don't really measure that, the system would understand the balance between that over time.
Okay, perfect. Next one. How do you account for the impact of COVID-19? Some businesses have augmented sales during the crisis, for example, e-commerce, but others have seen losses.
Yes. So that's a very important thing, changes of regime. And the point of AI is to automatically adapt to the changes of regime. So of course, here, there is no way that AI can anticipate that tomorrow there would be a confinement. So at the beginning of tomorrow, the system is a bit lost. But as soon as the new system, the regime continues in that difficult period, the AI will automatically readapt to the most recent past. So it will understand the change of regime, and it will adapt to the new regime, and by overweighting the recent past versus the older past. And that would be done automatically by these time series artificial intelligence system that we are using. In fact, if you take, for instance, airports or restaurants, airports in particular, it's now several months that these are new regimes that are changing very often, and on which you need to remember a little bit that there are some seasonality, but at the same time, the new regime is overriding everything, and that the system can adapt.
Okay,
By the
thank
way,
you, Olivier.
sorry, last item on that. Doing that manually with a human brain is very, very difficult, because you would have to redo the system every week as the new regime is set up. So leveraging AI post-crisis or post-major event is very interesting to go faster in the new regime control.
Exactly. Generally, in a B2B segment, prices are not available on the internet. How would you use artificial intelligence in that case?
So you could imagine that the system works only on your prices. Only on your prices, the system will look at offers and orders, and it will understand what is the conversion rate. And so it will adapt and manage to keep that conversion rate. And In fact, the more you can give information on the reason why an offer has been refused, the more it will help the machine to be more precise. Of course, and that is without having competitive price, just watching what have been the actual price of yours. Now, at the top of that, in most of the industries, you would get competitive price with several months of delay from analyst company. So you can feed that in, as well as you feed in, because it's delayed, you need to consider at the same time what were the market conditions at that time. So you need to feed also external data for the market condition for the price that are older. In fact, very often companies don't really understand, but through the large number of projects that they have, and through their understanding of their B2B client, they have already a lot of dimensions of potential price profiling, product mix perception, and dynamic of the client. So just on the existing data from every orders, there is already a lot to be done.
Okay, and next one. What internal capability do you need to implement IT decision science?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
I think I misread it. So, just a second. So, what internal capabilities do you need to implement IT or decision science?
So the internal capabilities here, the point is to work on the existing sales order. So the historical price with the identification of the client, where they were, who were the sales agent, the normal data that is in the ERP, right? So the basic thing is to connect to the sales order historical record in the ERP. And based on that, the system can start working. Then at the top of that, if you can connect the CRM system, it will bring more value. If you can connect external data, it will bring more value. And then to start with, you don't need to have a true live real-time access. You're going to start in the proof of value with a static extract. So as soon as you can do an historical dump of your historical records of sales order, you can start the proof of value to understand if the data that are there are driving rules that have value, that are valuable by the dynamic pricing. So it's really feasible in any system. In fact, in our client experience, we have even been able to connect many different types of ERP. So some clients have several ERP depending on the region and depending on the product. And we can extract these different ERP and consolidate all that perspective into one dynamic price system.
Okay, thank you, Olivier. Just one more. What is the difference between good dynamic pricing engine and a bad one? And are there any recommendations to determine this?
So it's a very broad question because there are many different type of dimensionality of this. It can be an IT implementation. It can be also the business view of it. For us, the key metric of quality is if the sales team understand and trust the price that is proposed. That's why as soon as the proof of value, we consider that we want to work with the people who are going to use that price, so the salespeople, and make sure that the price that are proposed by the system are understood and are trusted by that. And that's why I was saying we even need to tune from time to time, because you cannot understand very automatically all the element of a value chain of an industry. So by working with the true user of the price, the sales team, we think that it's the best metric for this. And of course, this is going to drive incremental revenue and margin because the sales team is driven by that.
Okay, thanks, Olivier. Maybe something that is a bit close to the other question. Are you able to share a high-level view of the investment needed for dynamic pricing adoption?
A high-level view
of the investment that is needed for dynamic pricing adoption.
So we can think about it in terms of IT investment, but also in terms of human investment. To start a proof of value, the IT work is not very significant because it's about extracting offline data and then processing that. But it's important that there is a human investment of people who understand the price. So the pricing team or the revenue management team or the sales team to be able to work and provide the right data and assess the result. So few tens of thousands euro to do a proof of value with the support of the right people, and just with that process in 2 weeks or in 2 months or 3 months will already show if implementing dynamic pricing is going to provide value to the system. And once this is started with this type of proof of value, then the move to the pilot is always going to be saying, okay, do we create enough value to justify the pilot? Yes, again, so in another 3 months of pilot, it can happen. But then the overall price on the IT side will also depend on the complexity of the current structure of the data. For those organizations who are not very digitalized, like you mentioned that 43% are not yet advanced digitalized in their pricing. So it depends very much of the status of the situation to understand how fast can we migrate to an automated tool. The point though is to do that in a scheduled way, in a phased way, by move of 2 or 3 months, and at the end of every 2 months to be able to say we create value, so we move forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Olivier. Maybe just one last one, just because we have so many. What is the biggest issue while setting up artificial intelligence? Is it cleaning the existing data, or is it getting confidence in AI for the executive board?
I think it's a bit of a mix of having an IT access to the data so that we understand the data. The data are what they are, so cleaning them will be possible, but the point is to use what's there. So having having access to the existing data is critical. At the same time, I would say is to have business ownership from the sales or the revenue management or the pricing in order to be able to do something on which we're going to be able to measure the value. And then executive management will come, because if both the IT team and the pricing or the business team say that they think they can provide value, then executive will usually be okay and drive that forward. Of course, if there is an executive who is already convinced that it will have to be used anyway in the future, then it's better because it can enable everything. Now, if you look at the industry and if you look at the key new competitors, especially from the online world, they all now are using that. So it's our belief that it is now something that should be more and more understood by executive, that using AI is a must to look forward on the price and drive price, as opposed to a more simple analytics which look backward and so can just react on what is the past.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Olivier. I want to thank everyone for joining this webinar. And Olivier, thank you for the very, very interesting webinar. I think we all agree. I received some very nice comments from the participants and lots of questions. So sorry we couldn't answer all of them, but I will send them to Olivier, and maybe you can get back to them via email. Maybe that's a solution, because we don't have any more time left. Very sorry. Any concluding remarks, Olivier?
I think, of course, we have been able to explain several things during this hour, but any other questions, any ideas, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd be happy to take this forward with you, and also adapt that to your local context and to your specific requirement. So do not hesitate to reach out to us via email or through the coordinated that will be provided in the presentation for those of you who download the presentation.
Yes, so you can just directly contact Olivier, or I will be also in contact with you. I will be sharing the presentation, so you can also ask any questions to me as well. And I think it's a great time to end the webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. I wish you a great day. Thank you again, Olivier. And we just have one quick question coming up after the webinar. If you could answer that, it would be very much appreciated. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice day. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to hear from you. Thank you.